Hello viewers, welcome back to English Only Zone. Today we are going to study a poem from our Class 8th English book, Poorvi. And the name of the poem is A Concrete Example. So before we study the poem, let's do this exercise given before the poem in the book. So here are some images and some words written. We have to find out the name of the words from these images. So the first image here is of hedge. It is a hedge. Hedge. Second is a wheelbarrow. Third is a sapling. Fourth is flower beds. Fifth is fence. The sixth image here is flower pot. The seventh image here is of pebbles. The eighth image is garden hose. Ninth is vine, vine, vine. And the 10th is rockery. What does the word rockery means? Rockery actually means a decorative arrangement of pebbles. So this is in the exercise given before the poem. Now the second question here is, work in groups of 4. What kind of a garden would you like to have? So the kind of a garden which we would like to have, we have to think about it and mention the features. It can be full of grass, it can be full of flowers, beautiful small plants. So it is up to you. It depends on your imagery, your own creative skills, that what kind of a garden you want. And then you can discuss the answer with your classmates and teacher. The third is, read the title of the poem. What comes to your mind when you read the word concrete? So what does the word concrete actually mean? It means something solid, like cement, stone. Does it have more than one meaning? Now this you write down in the comment box if this word concrete has more than one meaning. And if yes, what is the other meaning? I'll reply it in the comment box only where you will answer it. Okay, now let's move on to the poem, a concrete example. Now before we start the poem, let us discuss some points related to the poem. The poem is written in a very simple and lucid style. It is full of humor. In this poem, there is a garden full of stones, and it is somewhat a strange garden because usually we notice gardens full of grass, full of plants, but this strange garden is full of stones. It has lily plants, a sundial, and the plants are so small that even the poet is unable to notice them. So let's read the poem and understand it. My next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones. So here, the name of the neighbor is Mrs. Jones. She got a garden full of stones. Has got a garden full of stones. Mrs. Jones has a garden which is full of stones. A crazy path, a lily pond, a rockery, and just beyond a sundial with a strange device, which Mrs. Jones thinks rather nice. So what does this garden have? A crazy path, a lily pond. A pond is there which is full of flowers. Lilies are very delicate flowers and they come in different colors. There's a rockery. Just now while we were doing the exercise, I told you the meaning of rockery. It means a decorative arrangement of stones, a decorative arrangement of pebbles. And just beyond, उससे थोड़ा सा ही आगे, a sundial is kept. A sundial with a strange device. It is a strange device. It looks strange, which Mrs. Jones thinks rather nice. And Mrs. Jones thinks that the device is actually nice. The poet consider sundial as a strange device, but Mrs. Jones, the owner of the garden, thinks that the device is actually a nice one. So here we understand that different people have different perceptions of looking at things. The poet is not liking the sundial. He's considering it as a strange one, whereas Mrs. Jones thinks that device is actually a nice one. It is not a strange device, it is a good device. So let's move on to the next part. My next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones, puts little plants between the stones. They are so delicate and small. They don't mean anything at all. I can't think how she gets them in, unless she plants them with a pin. Now, again, the first line of the stanza is repeated in the second stanza. This repetition of words or phrases or the entire line is considered as refrain. What do we call it? Refrain. Refrain. This is refrain. So the poet says, my next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones. He is emphasizing the fact that the person whose garden he is talking is his next door neighbor, and the neighbor's name is Mrs. Jones. So he is emphasizing on this fact. Puts little plants between the stones. She has a habit of putting little plants between the stones. They are so delicate and small. They don't mean anything at all. And the plants are so delicate. They are so small that they don't mean anything at all. What is the point of planting such small, delicate plants? I can't think how she gets them in. And then the poet says, I can't understand how she manages to put the plants inside the gaps of the stones unless she plants them with a pin. Unless she plants the saplings with a pin, she won't be able to go inside that area, inside that tiny gap and plant the plant there. So the poet says कि जब तक मिसेस जोन्स एक पिन की हेल्प से उसको प्लांट नहीं करेंगी तब तक वहाँ पर कुछ भी प्लांट नहीं हो सकता है. The plants are so small and the gaps between the pebbles are also very small. तो उनमें कोई प्लांट लगा पाना is actually difficult. And maybe Mrs. Jones uses a pin to plant those plants inside. I hope you have understood this second stanza as well. Now let's move on to the third stanza. My next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones, once asked me round to see her stones. Now once, the next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones. See, in the third stanza also the same words have been repeated. The first line has been repeated, again emphasizing the fact that the person in whose garden he was visiting is Mrs. Jones, and she is her next door neighbor. So once she asked me round to see her stones. Once the neighbor asked the poet to come to her garden and to see the stones. See, mark the fact that the poet is writing stones, not the plants. अब यहाँ पर फिर से हमारी परसेप्शन का डिफरेंस आ जाता है. मे बी मिसेस जोन्स हैड कॉल्ड द पोएट टू सी द गार्डन, टू like the beauty of the garden, to appreciate the beauty of the garden. But what did the poet notice here? He just noticed the stones all around. We stood and talked about a flower for quite a quarter of an hour. So they both, the neighbor and the poet, they both stood there and talked about a flower. Mrs. Jones was talking about a flower with the poet, and they talked for quite a quarter of an hour. What does this phrase mean, quarter of an hour? It actually means 15 minutes. So they talked for about 15 minutes. Where's this lovely thing? I cried. And when they have talked for quite a long time, for about 15 minutes, about only a flower, so the poet was he was more curious to know that where is that lovely thing. He asked Mrs. Jones. You are standing on it, she replied. And Mrs. Jones replied that the poet was standing on that thing about whom they were talking. Means the thing was so small, it was so tiny, the flower was so peculiar that the poet was unable to even notice it. So this was all in the poem. Now let's understand the rhyming scheme. See, rhyming scheme can be found out using the last words of the lines. Here we have Jones and stones, the last word of first two lines. राइमिंग स्कीम फाइंड आउट करने के लिए जो फर्स्ट लाइन होती है उसके लास्ट वर्ड को हम ए नेम दे देते हैं. कोई भी अगर फर्स्ट लाइन होगी उसके लास्ट वर्ड को वी विल गिव द नेम ए. And then we'll move on to the next line and see the next word. If the last word of the next line matches with the rhyme of the last word of the first line, अगर सेकेंड लाइन का लास्ट वर्ड फर्स्ट लाइन के लास्ट वर्ड से मैच कर रहा है, उसका साउंड मैच कर रहा है, तो हम सेकेंड लाइन को भी ए नेम दे देंगे. ओके, नाउ लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द थर्ड लाइन. इट इज फ्लावर रिटन इन द एंड and in the fourth line it is R written in the end. तो फ्लावर और आर भी आपस में राइम कर रहे हैं, लेकिन फ्लावर और आर जोन्स और स्टोन्स से राइम नहीं कर रहे हैं. तो जो सेम वर्ड्स हैं जिनकी सेम साउंड है उनको तो हमने ए नेम दे दिया. तो अब जिसकी साउंड अलग है उसको हम क्या नेम दे देंगे? बी. तो फ्लावर एंड आर वुड बी बी. एंड देन क्राइड एंड रिप्लाइड. अगेन दे बोथ आर राइमिंग बट देयर sound is not the same as Jones, stones and flower are. So we will give them the name C. So the rhyming scheme is AABBCC. I hope you've understood how to find out the rhyming scheme. Now let us discuss the theme of this poem. Here the poet emphasized that people only notice loud or big things, but they do not notice the beauty in smaller things, in tiny things of life. They only appreciate big things. They only appreciate big achievements. They do not appreciate small achievements, which are to be appreciated if we want to live the life fully and happily. Now the second theme of this poem is Mrs. Jones was very happy seeing her garden. But the poet is the one who's considering it unrealistic and even stands on a flower about whom they were talking. So a thing which is true for one can be unrealistic for the other person. एक पर्सन के लिए जो चीज़ सच हो सकती है, अच्छी हो सकती है, वही चीज़ दूसरे पर्सन के लिए अनरियलिस्टिक और मीनिंगलेस हो सकती है. So it just depends on our perception. And the third theme of the poem is thinking differently. A garden is always full of flowers. When we think about a garden, we imagine a place full of grass, flowers, small plants, shrubs, herbs. So all these things come to our mind when we think of a garden. But here, Mrs. Jones had a different thinking. She used pebbles. She used stones to create a beautiful garden, and she was happy creating a happy place for herself. So this was in the theme. I hope you have understood the theme as well as the explanation of the poem. If you have any doubts, you may feel free to write them in the comment box. I'll answer them there. And if you have liked the explanation, please press the like button, share the video with your friends, and subscribe the channel for more such videos. Thank you so much for watching.